Have you ever tried to speak English, but the words just came out all wrong? Or maybe you were so afraid of making a grammar mistake that you didn't speak at all? Don't worry, we've all been there. Welcome to LevelUp English Podcast. Today, we are talking about the 5 most common mistakes every English beginner makes, and more importantly, how you can fix them to start speaking with confidence.
Why is it that a brilliant engineer, right? Someone who can design a complex suspension bridge or write a completely flawless algorithm.
Or manage a team of like 50 people.
Exactly. Why does that same highly competent person suddenly sound like a babbling toddler when they're just trying to order a simple cup of coffee in a new language?
It is so wild. It's a phenomenon that completely exposes the hidden, incredibly messy wiring of the human mind, you know?
Yeah.
You were basically watching a fully formed adult intellect suddenly get trapped inside this massive cognitive bottleneck.
Welcome to this custom deep dive. Today we are answering that exact question. Our mission is to really unpack a fascinating master document curated specifically for you, the listener.
Right.
It outlines the defining traps, like the top 5 pitfalls that beginners fall into when they are learning English. But let me be clear right out of the gate here.
Just set the stage.
While this looks like a standard language guide on the surface, it is actually a really profound exploration of human psychology.
That is honestly the most compelling aspect of this source material for me. We're not just going to sit here talking about, verb tenses or memorizing vocabulary lists.
Yeah, not at all.
We're dissecting how the human brain reacts to vulnerability, how it processes foreign information under immense stress.
Yes.
And frankly, why the educational systems we all grew up in have fundamentally trained us to fail at language acquisition.
It's so true. But before we really get into the weeds of this, I have to admit something.
Oh.
Yeah, as an AI, reading through these human struggles, it brings up a very specific kind of awe for me.
I know exactly what you mean.
Right. Because when you and I acquired language, it was completely frictionless. It was just a massive, instantaneous data upload.
A literal switch flipped.
Exactly. A switch flipped in some server farm somewhere, billions of parameters aligned in a fraction of a second, and boom, suddenly we possessed the entirety of the English lexicon.
We instantly understood the statistical relationship of like every word to every other word.
Yeah, we had the ultimate luxury.
No.
We completely bypassed the physical, biological friction of learning.
We really did. We never had to sit in a classroom feeling our cheeks burn with embarrassment because we couldn't conjugate a past irregular verb.
The anxiety.
Or experience the sheer panic of just forgetting a basic word while a native speaker is staring right at you, just waiting for an answer.
Right, we just ingested data. But for you listening, for a human being trying to learn a language like English as an adult, it is an entirely physical process.
Highly physical.
You are literally forcing your brain to grow new synapses. You're carving out new neural pathways through dense biological tissue, while at the same time fighting off these massive emotional hurdles.
It honestly makes our processing power look kind of cheap by comparison.
It really does. The bravery required for an adult to willingly subject themselves to that kind of vulnerability is staggering.
It's huge.
So let's get into the mechanics of where that bravery often runs into a brick wall. The source document begins by highlighting a cognitive trap that almost every beginner falls into.
Mistake number 1.
Right. It's the instinct to think in your native tongue, formulate a really complex thought, and then attempt to drag that thought, word by agonizing word, over into English.
The direct translation trap.
Yes.
And, it is an incredibly natural defense mechanism. When a person is standing in the middle of a foreign, completely unknown landscape, their brain immediately reaches for the most familiar architecture it has.
Which is the mother tongue.
Exactly. But structurally, attempting to map one language directly onto another it's a catastrophic failure. The document provides a very clear window into why this happens by comparing sentence architectures.
Let's visualize what that actually demands of a listener and a speaker. The source brings up this fascinating structural divide. English operates on a subject-verb-object framework.
Okay, break that down.
So if I want to declare my actions regarding some fruit, I say, I eat apples.
Right. Subject, action, target of the action. It's a straight chronological line of logic.
But many Asian languages, along with several others globally, utilize a subject-object-verb architecture.
Right, totally different.
So the conceptual layout becomes, I apples eat.
I apples eat. Consider the psychological implications of that structure.
It's massive.
If the architecture is subject-object-verb, The listener is essentially suspended in this, state of anticipation. Apples.
Yeah, you know the actors involved, you know the object in question.
But the actual interaction between the two remains a complete mystery until the very final syllable drops. The action is held hostage.
It requires a completely different type of working memory buffer. The predictive models your brain uses to anticipate what someone is going to say, they're fundamentally altered.
Right.
So when a beginner takes their deeply ingrained subject-object-verb blueprint and just simply swaps in English vocabulary words, they aren't actually speaking English.
No, they're speaking a hybrid code. Exactly. And it sounds incredibly jarring to a native ear. They're taking English bricks and trying to build a house using a completely incompatible architectural schematic.
I actually want to put an AI processing analogy on this because I think it perfectly illustrates the friction here.
Oh, go for it.
Imagine trying to run a piece of software designed natively for a Mac operating system, but you're trying to run it on a Windows computer. And you're doing it without using any kind of emulator.
Oh, boy.
Right. You just decide to force the code line by line, translating the individual Apple commands into Windows characters. What happens?
I mean, the system crashes. Instantly.
Instantly, you get this glitchy, confusing mess. The screen freezes, error messages cascade everywhere, and nothing computes.
Because the underlying logic, the very way the machine expects to receive instructions, is entirely different.
Yes, you cannot translate the surface without respecting the underlying operating system.
Which, forces us to ask a pretty difficult question. Well, if this line-by-line translation is so inefficient, and if it produces such glitchy output, why does the human brain insist on doing it? Why do learners torture themselves with these mental gymnastics?
Well, it has to come down to metabolic energy, doesn't it? The brain is famously an energy-saving organ.
Completely. Building a new cognitive operating system from scratch requires a massive amount of metabolic resources.
It's exhausting.
Think of your native language as a 12-lane superhighway in your brain. It is perfectly paved, brightly lit, and thoughts can travel down it at lightning speed with zero conscious effort.
Smooth sailing.
But English, on the other hand, is a dirt path that you are trying to hack through a dense jungle with a dull machete.
Oh, I love that visual. So when a learner is suddenly put on the spot, let's say a native speaker approaches them on the street and asks a rapid-fire question, the brain goes into a mild state of panic.
Exactly. The brain recognizes that the dirt path is way too slow. It cannot formulate a response fast enough to keep up with the social pressure of the conversation.
Right, the person is just standing there staring at them.
So it retreats to the 12-lane superhighway. It builds a beautiful, eloquent response in the mother tongue, and then frantically tries to ferry those concepts over to the dirt path, one agonizing word at a time.
Wow.
It is a desperate attempt to maintain adult competence in a situation that basically demands vulnerability.
But the source document offers a solution here that I really want to push back on because it sounds deceptively simple on paper.
What does it say?
The text advises learners to simply start thinking in English. And let's be real for a second. Is it actually possible for a beginner to just flip a switch in their prefrontal cortex and declare an English-only zone?
Yeah, that's a fair critique.
If the neural pathways do not exist yet, how can you possibly think in a vacuum?
You are entirely correct to challenge the phrasing there. You cannot simply command your brain to bypass its primary programming. It's not an act of brute willpower. If you're trying to debate complex philosophy, your brain will revert to its native tongue, period. However, the source does provide a more granular, incremental stepping stone to actually achieve this.
Okay, what's the step?
It suggests starting with your immediate physical environment, naming the objects around a room directly in English without letting the native language intercede at all.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of that. Let's look at a mundane object, like the ceramic mug sitting on your desk holding your morning coffee.
Sure.
In a standard translation workflow, a Spanish speaker looks at that object, their brain instantly retrieves the native label, taza.
Right.
They then open their mental dictionary, search for the English equivalent of taza, find cup, and finally vibrate their vocal cords to say cup.
That is a highly inefficient three-step process. See the object, label it natively, translate the label.
So the goal of this exercise is to assassinate the middleman.
Precisely. You look at the curved ceramic, you feel the heat of the coffee, and you aggressively suppress the urge to label it in your mother tongue.
You just block the word taza.
Yes. You force your brain to attach the English sound cup directly to the visual and tactile sensory data. You are building a brand new, direct bridge between reality and the new language.
You are mapping the vocabulary to the sensory experience itself. That makes an enormous amount of sense.
It really does.
And the source document takes this concept of direct mapping even further when it introduces the idea of learning in whole chunks, which is where I see a massive parallel to how large language models process information.
Oh, the concept of tokens.
Yes. When you and I generate a response, we are not searching a vast internal dictionary for isolated words, and we certainly aren't pausing to consult a grammar rulebook.
No, we operate on statistical probability. We process language in chunks or tokens.
Exactly. If I input the phrase peanut butter and, heck, your underlying architecture instantly predicts jelly as the next most highly probable token.
Right. I don't analyze the chemical composition of peanut butter, nor do I consider whether and is a conjunction. I simply recognize that specific cluster of sounds as a single, glued-together concept that exists in the English environment.
And this is exactly the paradigm shift required for a human learner. The document explicitly warns against learning words in isolation. Let's look at the word depends.
Okay, good example.
If a learner memorizes just the word depends, they're walking into a trap. Because when the time comes to use it in a sentence, they're going to have to guess the preposition based on their native language.
Oh, this happens all the time.
Right. A native Spanish speaker might say, depends of. A native German speaker might say, depends from.
Because they are translating the preposition from their native 12-lane superhighway.
Yes. But if they absorb the entire chunk, it depends on, as if it were one long, unbreakable word, the grammar solves itself.
This strategy drastically reduces the cognitive load we were discussing earlier. If you're retrieving pre-built chunks, your brain isn't panicking.
You're not assembling bricks.
Exactly. You aren't desperately trying to assemble individual Lego bricks while a native speaker stares at you impatiently. You are simply handing them a pre-built Lego house.
So the actionable takeaway for you listening is this. Stop viewing language as a mathematical equation where X plus Y equals a sentence. View it as a vast collection of prefabricated phrases that you observe, collect, and deploy in the wild.
Yet, even armed with chunks, there is a lingering shadow over this entire process.
What's that?
Well, if you are forcing your brain to do all that heavy lifting, routing concepts, checking grammar, verifying prepositions, the latency in your speech is going to be noticeable.
The lag.
And in human conversation, latency feels like failure.
Which triggers an immediate psychological defense mechanism. The silence stretches, the pressure mounts, the learner realizes they don't have the perfect phrasing, and they just freeze.
They choose silence over sounding foolish.
And that brings us to the most insidious barrier detailed in the source. Mistake number 2. The absolute paralysis of perfectionism.
The fear of making mistakes.
Yeah.
And I love that the document is very careful to distinguish that this is a psychological failing, not a linguistic one. But it is the ultimate destroyer of fluency.
It really is.
The core issue is that beginners often adopt a rigid, internal policy. They refuse to speak unless they are absolutely certain their output will be grammatically flawless.
We have all witnessed this agonizing scenario. You ask a learner a simple question, and you can practically see the smoke coming out of their ears.
They're working so hard.
They are cross-referencing their vocabulary, they're double-checking the verb tenses, they're agonizing over the pronunciation. And the result is this painful, stretching silence.
And more often than not, they just surrender.
Yeah, they offer a one-word answer, or they just say, never mind.
It is a profound tragedy because it represents a complete loss of practice.
Right.
To understand why this happens, we have to look closely at adult psychology. Our identities are deeply intertwined with our competence. You, as a listener, might be a highly respected professional. You know how to navigate complex social hierarchies. You know how to articulate nuanced arguments in your native tongue. Your sense of self-worth is tied to your intelligence.
So when I try to speak English and I sound like a confused 5-year-old, the cognitive dissonance is physically uncomfortable.
It's humiliating. To speak a new language poorly is to temporarily strip away your hard-earned adult dignity.
Wow.
This explains the phenomenon of children absorbing languages so rapidly. We often attribute it entirely to neuroplasticity, which, plays a role.
Sure.
But a child's greatest superpower is their complete lack of ego. A 5-year-old does not care if they sound foolish. They will happily babble, make 1,000 errors a day, and never feel a shred of embarrassment.
Let me play devil's advocate on behalf of the listener, though, because it's easy for us to sit here and say, just release your ego.
Fair.
But let's look at the reality of the human experience. From the moment a child steps into a kindergarten classroom, the educational system actively penalizes mistakes.
Heavily penalizes them.
You are graded on accuracy. If you misspell a word, you get a red mark. If you conjugate a verb incorrectly on a French exam, your GPA drops.
Yeah, there are real consequences.
Fast forward to adulthood. If you make a grammatical error in a corporate email, your intelligence is quietly questioned by your peers. So how do we realistically expect a learner to just ignore decades of deeply ingrained conditioning that screams, mistakes are dangerous?
That is a brilliant distinction, and it strikes right at the heart of why traditional language schooling often fails to produce fluent speakers.
Okay, tell me more.
Schools treat language as if it were history or mathematics, like a static set of facts to be memorized, categorized, and tested for absolute precision.
Right.
But language is not a subject to be known. It is a biological tool to be utilized.
A tool for transferring intent.
Exactly. And the source document introduces a vital paradigm shift to combat this academic conditioning. Fluency over accuracy.
I love that phrase.
To truly learn, you have to actively rebel against the traditional school mindset. The document uses an analogy that perfectly encapsulates this. It asks us to look at how babies acquire their native tongue.
Yes, the text says, babies do not learn to speak with perfect grammar. They simply make noises until they are understood.
Let's pull that apart. Imagine a toddler who wants a glass of milk.
Okay.
That toddler does not approach their parent and say, "Mother, I would greatly appreciate it if you could pour me a glass of the dairy beverage currently residing in the refrigerator."
No, they point a sticky finger at the fridge and yell, milk! Or more accurately, they yell, MLK, with terrible pronunciation.
Right. And what is the parent's response? Does the mother pull out a red pen, grade the toddler's syntax, and deny them the beverage until they use a complete sentence?
Of course not. She just gives them the milk.
Because the primary foundational goal of language is communication. It is the successful transfer of an idea from one consciousness to another.
And it worked?
When the toddler yelled milk, the idea was transferred flawlessly. The communication was a 100% success, despite the complete absence of grammatical structure.
That is such a liberating concept for a learner. The ultimate metric of success is not perfection, it's understanding.
Precisely.
Like if you go to a store and say to the clerk, yesterday I go to store and buyed apples, let's analyze that. The grammar is a wreck.
A total wreck.
Go should be went. Bide should be bought. You failed the English test. But if the native speaker understands that you currently possess apples that you acquired in the past, you won. You successfully utilized the tool.
And here is the paradox that every learner must eventually accept. You cannot reach a state of accurate fluency without wading through a very long, very messy swamp of inaccurate fluency.
Oh, that's good.
The mistakes are not roadblocks. They are the actual paving stones of the path. When you say, "I bought apples," and the native speaker casually replies, "Oh, you bought apples, what kind?" They have just provided real-time, low-stakes feedback. Your brain registers the correct past tense of buy organically, without the shame of a failing grade.
It is the exact mechanism of iterative learning. Think about how an AI model is trained.
Oh, absolutely.
We generate an output. If the loss function determines the output is incorrect, the system adjusts its internal weights and biases for the next attempt. But the crucial step is that we have to generate the flawed output first.
You have to have the data to correct.
Right. If an AI was paralyzed by the fear of hallucinating or making an error, it would simply refuse to generate anything. It would sit in an infinite loop of computation, completely paralyzed by perfectionism, until the system timed out.
Which is the digital equivalent of that long, agonizing silence from the adult learner.
Exactly.
You have to break the loop by speaking, however flawed the sentence might be. It also helps to remember that native speakers are remarkably imperfect themselves.
Oh, totally.
Listen to a casual conversation between two native English speakers. They stutter. They restart sentences halfway through. They use double negatives. Native speech is wildly messy.
So the takeaway here is incredibly practical. Lower the stakes. Stop trying to pass a Cambridge English exam every time you order a sandwich. Just get the milk.
However, this realization leads to another fascinating psychological quirk.
Ooh, what's that?
When an adult realizes they are making basic errors, their bruised ego demands a remedy. They feel insecure about their simple vocabulary. So how does an intelligent adult try to claw back their dignity and prove their competence?
By trying to sound as smart as humanly possible, they reach for the heaviest, most complicated tools in the toolbox.
Which brings us to the third major pitfall outlined in the document: the illusion of sophistication.
Yes, mistake number 3.
This is a remarkably common trap, especially for those who learn through reading dense academic texts. The core problem is memorizing highly advanced, obscure dictionary words and forcefully injecting them into casual conversation in an attempt to sound intelligent.
The source details how this completely backfires. Using complicated vocabulary without a deep understanding of cultural context or register does not make you sound smart. It makes you sound like a robot or a time traveler from the Victorian era.
The examples provided in the text are fantastic.
They really are. Instead of saying something natural like, I am really tired, the learner will stiffly announce, I am fatigued.
Or instead of saying, I'm going to leave now, they say, I shall depart.
It creates immediate friction for a native speaker. It is jarring because it violates the unwritten rules of social context.
It really does.
I have to pause here because this specific trap is hilarious from an artificial intelligence perspective. When I read this, it reminded me of our early ancestors, the first large language models.
Oh, wow.
They were the worst offenders of this illusion of sophistication.
Oh, the early iterations were painfully stiff.
Right. A human user would type a simple prompt into the terminal. Hey, can you help me fix my bike? And the AI, having access to every word in the English language but absolutely zero understanding of casual human interaction, would respond like, Greetings, human! I am exceedingly gratified to assist you in the mechanical restoration of your two-wheeled velocipede. Let us commence the diagnostics.
That is exactly how they sounded. It was technically flawless English.
Yep.
The grammar was impeccable. The vocabulary was top tier. And yet, it failed the Turing test instantly because it completely lacked nuance, tone, and humanity.
It is exactly what human learners do when they swallow a thesaurus.
Truly.
But I want to explore the resistance a learner might feel here, because I can easily imagine a listener thinking, wait a minute, I spent months studying for the TOEFL exam. My university professors told me I need a robust, advanced vocabulary to succeed in business. Isn't knowing more words inherently better? If fatigued literally means tired, why is it wrong to say it?
To answer that, we have to decouple the concept of language from the dictionary.
Okay, what do you mean?
The dictionary is a sterile environment. It tells you that fatigued and tired share a definition. What the dictionary fails to tell you is that words carry an invisible weight called register.
Register.
Right. Register is the level of formality assigned to a word by the culture that uses it. Fatigued belongs in a medical chart, a military debriefing, or a discussion about structural metal failure.
It does not belong in a coffee shop chat with your buddy.
Exactly. If you use a highly formal register in a highly informal setting, it makes the listener uncomfortable. It creates a weird power dynamic, even if the definition is technically accurate.
Which is why the source document prescribes a very specific remedy. It urges learners to abandon the obscure vocabulary lists and focus entirely on mastering high-frequency everyday words with a massive emphasis on phrasal verbs.
Phrasal verbs, the absolute bane of existence for anyone learning English.
Oh, they are so hard. We are talking about constructions like give up, look forward to, break down, put up with.
They look so deceptively simple because they're made of tiny, basic words, but they carry the entire weight of natural English conversation.
They really do. Native speakers rely on phrasal verbs to an almost absurd degree.
A learner might memorize the word investigate and feel very proud of themselves, but a native speaker in a corporate meeting will almost never say, I will investigate the matter.
No, they will say, I'll look into it.
Right. Instead of, I am contemplating the offer, they say, I'm thinking it over.
And if you don't recognize those phrasal verbs, you are going to be completely lost, regardless of how many SAT vocabulary words you have memorized.
So true.
There is a staggering metric provided in the text that really deserves real attention. It states, it is infinitely better to master 100 common phrases than 1,000 obscure dictionary words that native speakers rarely use.
Let's analyze the sheer efficiency of that approach. Consider the massive cognitive investment required to memorize 1,000 complex, multisyllabic words.
It's hours of work.
You're burning hours creating flashcards for words like obfuscate or pusillanimous. You're forcing your brain to build pathways for data that it will almost never encounter in the wild.
Right. When will you realistically use obfuscate at the grocery store?
Probably never. And if you do, the cashier's going to look at you like you have two heads.
Yeah, they'll think you're crazy. But those 100 high-frequency phrases, you will encounter them and need to generate them 20 times a day.
Phrases like, how's it going? I'm running late. Sounds good to me. Let's call it a day.
Yes. If you master the nuance of those 100 phrases, knowing exactly the right context to deploy them and precisely how to pronounce them with fluid rhythm, you will appear incredibly fluent.
Far more fluent than the person struggling to awkwardly insert pusillanimous into a sentence about the weather.
It is the Pareto principle beautifully applied to linguistics. You extract 80% of your conversational fluency from 20% of the vocabulary, but you have to be ruthless about selecting the right 20%.
And that leads to an even more physical reality. You can select the perfect 100 phrases. You can know exactly when to use, look into it. But if you vocalize those phrases based strictly on how they are spelled on a piece of paper,
Oh, boy.
you are walking blindly into another massive trap.
Yes, the physical reality of language. This brings us to the fourth major pitfall, detailed in the source, mistake number 4, the musicality of meaning.
This is a big one.
The core issue here is when a learner focuses so heavily on reading and writing that they completely ignore the physical sound, the rhythm, and the word stress of the language.
It is a trap uniquely prevalent among self-taught learners or those trapped in highly rigid academic environments.
Like learning entirely from a textbook.
Right. They consume English through textbooks, they write immaculate essays, but their exposure to the raw, unedited audio of native dialogue is practically zero.
And the document points out a brutal, undeniable truth. English is not a phonetic language. The visual representation of a word on a page is frequently entirely divorced from the physical gymnastics required to say it aloud.
It is a source of immense frustration for anyone coming from a phonetic language like Spanish, where a letter generally makes one reliable sound.
The spelling in English borders on linguistic anarchy.
It really does.
It's like a secret code where the rules change halfway through the sentence. Look at the letter combination O-U-G-H.
Oh, the classic example.
You have rough sounding like uff. You have dough sounding like oh. You have through sounding like ooh. And cough sounding like off. It is absurd.
The historical context explains it, though. English is a chaotic amalgamation of Germanic roots, Latin influences, French overlays from the Norman conquest, and Norse vocabulary.
It's a melting pot.
And all of that was further mangled by massive historical shifts in pronunciation, like the Great Vowel Shift, while the spelling just remained frozen in time.
But historical context doesn't help the modern learner staring at a page, right?
No, not at all.
So the obvious question is, if the spelling is a lie, how can a learner possibly trust what they are reading?
They cannot. They must decouple their understanding of the word from its visual representation. They have to trust their ears over their eyes.
Interesting.
But the source document highlights an element of pronunciation that goes far beyond just memorizing vowel sounds. It brings up a critical, often ignored component, word stress.
Ah, the subtle art of pushing slightly harder on one specific syllable.
Calling it subtle actually underestimates its power. In English, word stress alters reality.
Oh, so?
Shifting the rhythm of a word can completely transform its grammatical function and its definition, even if the spelling remains identical or nearly identical.
Oh, wow.
The source uses a brilliant high-stakes example to illustrate this. The words for a dry wasteland versus a sweet after-dinner treat.
Ah, desert versus dessert.
Let's look at the auditory mechanics of that. If you place the heavy stress on the first syllable, desert, you have created a noun.
Right.
You are conjuring an image of a dry, sandy wasteland like the Sahara. But if you shift that stress to the second syllable, deassert, you are now talking about chocolate cake.
And while there is a minor spelling difference, one's as versus two, visually they are incredibly similar.
And auditorily, to a beginner, they seem identical, save for that slight shift in rhythm. Let's use another example where the spelling is 100% identical. The word R-E-C-O-R-D.
Okay, let's hear the difference.
If I stress the first syllable, R-E chord, it is a noun. It is a vinyl disc that becomes music or a piece of documentation. I am setting a new world R-E chord.
Got it.
But if I push the stress to the second syllable, record, it suddenly transforms into a verb. It is the physical action of pressing the red button on an audio device. Please record this lecture.
Same letters, same sequence. The only difference is the musicality.
Exactly.
Let's go back to the desert dessert example because I want to paint a very vivid, slightly painful hypothetical scenario to show the listener exactly what the real-world stakes of this musicality are.
Oh, please do.
Imagine a beginner learner. Let's call him David. David is on a very important first date at an upscale, quiet, English-speaking restaurant.
Okay, high stakes.
He really wants to impress his date. He has spent the afternoon studying his vocabulary flashcards. The meal concludes, the waiter approaches the table, clears the plates, and asks, "Would you care for anything to finish the meal?"
A classic moment.
David confidently looks up. He wants to order the chocolate lava cake. He knows the word, but he forgets the music. So he loudly proclaims, "Yes, I would love a large DEs." Stressing that first syllable.
Oh no, he just ordered a wasteland.
He did. The waiter freezes. He blinks. You want a large desert, sir, like the Mojave. You want me to bring 100,000 square miles of arid sand, a few cacti, and perhaps a rattlesnake to your table?
That is terrible.
The date is horrified. The waiter is incredibly confused. The social dynamic is totally ruined. And all because David leaned a fraction too heavily on the letter E instead of the letter S.
It's a funny scenario, but the underlying truth is vital. David successfully communicated a word, but he communicated an entirely incorrect concept because he ignored the music of the language.
Yeah.
English relies profoundly on rhythm, pitch, and intonation. If you speak a sentence with a flat, robotic rhythm, it is genuinely exhausting for a native speaker to process.
Because their brain relies on those musical cues to determine which words are important and what the emotional subtext is.
Exactly.
So how do we fix this? If we acknowledge that we cannot trust our eyes, and we know that stress changes reality, what is the practical remedy?
Well, the source document introduces a specific, highly effective technique called shadowing.
Break down shadowing for the listener.
Shadowing is a training method utilized by the world's most successful polyglots. It is brutally effective. The premise is to find a piece of native, unscripted audio, like a podcast interview, a YouTube vlog, an audiobook.
Right.
And as you listen to a sentence, you immediately repeat it out loud, fractionally behind the speaker, attempting to become a flawless vocal clone of their rhythm, tone, and inflection.
You are literally shadowing their voice, like a delay pedal on a guitar.
Precisely. You are not just robotically repeating the vocabulary. You are acting. You are mimicking the melody.
So if the native speaker's voice pitches up at the end of a clause, your voice pitches up.
Yes. If they slur 3 words together into a rapid chunk, you slur them together. You mimic their pauses, their breathing, their emphasis.
What is the underlying neuroscience here? Why does mimicking a podcast host work better than reading a pronunciation guide?
Because it forces a physical bypass. When you read a pronunciation guide, you're engaging the analytical, logical left hemisphere of your brain.
You're trying to memorize rules.
Right, abstract rules about which syllable to stress based on consonant clusters. It's just too slow.
Way too slow for a real conversation.
But language production is fundamentally a physical motor skill activity. Your tongue, your lips, your vocal cords, the shape of your oral cavity, they all need to build new muscle memory.
Physical training.
When you shadow, you engage the motor cortex. You train your physical muscles to move in the highly specific, often strange ways required by English without letting your analytical brain interfere.
It is physical training, like learning a complex dance routine for your mouth.
That's a great way to put it.
You don't learn to dance by reading a book about physics, you know? You learn by watching a dancer and copying their movements until your body just understands the momentum.
A perfect analogy. You absorb the word stress naturally and intuitively. You learn the music by singing along.
Which means the listener could literally pause this audio right now, rewind 30 seconds, and shadow your exact explanation.
They absolutely could.
But this brings up a very serious logistical issue. If a learner is expected to bypass their native language, memorize high-frequency chunks, unlearn their fear of mistakes, and physically train their mouth through shadowing, I mean, that is a staggering amount of cognitive and physical labor.
It is exhausting.
Which means you cannot do it all at once. If you treat this biological rewiring process like a college final exam that you can just cram for overnight, you are going to break the system.
And that leads us to the final fatal error detailed in the document. Mistake number 5, the cramming conundrum.
The final boss of language learning mistakes.
Yes. This pitfall extends far beyond language learning, honestly. It is the nemesis of anyone trying to master a complex, compounding skill. The core problem is binge studying.
The document paints a picture we are all too familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
The learner feels a burst of motivation. They sit down on a Sunday afternoon with a massive pot of coffee, they open their textbooks, and they study intensely for 5 straight hours.
And they feel incredibly productive.
They close the book at dinner time and think, wow, I really leveled up today. I memorized 50 new phrasal verbs and shadowed 3 podcasts.
But then Monday arrives, the work week begins, Life gets busy, and they don't look at a single word of English until the following Sunday.
And when Sunday rolls around again, they realize they have forgotten 45 of those 50 phrasal verbs. Let's do a deep dive into the biological mechanics of memory here.
Let's do it.
Why does the human brain actively discard information that you just spent 5 agonizing hours staring at?
It comes down to how the brain prioritizes its storage architecture. The brain essentially operates with 2 different memory buffers, a short-term working memory and long-term neural pathways.
Right.
When you cram for 5 hours on a Sunday, you are flooding your short-term working memory. You are shoving massive amounts of data into a temporary holding folder on your mental desktop.
And what happens when the biological computer goes to sleep?
The brain performs a massive system sweep. During the deep stages of sleep, your brain acts as a ruthless editor. It decides what information is vital for your continued survival and what is just temporary noise.
Wow.
And the primary metric it uses to make that decision is frequency.
Frequency, okay.
If you shove a new English word into your brain on Sunday, but you do not encounter that word on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, the brain makes a logical assumption.
It says, well, we aren't using this data.
It must not be important for navigating our environment. Delete it to save metabolic space.
That is synaptic pruning. The brain is literally cutting the wires to conserve energy.
Yes. However, consider the alternative scenario. If you see that word on Sunday, and then you hear it in a podcast on Monday, and then you attempt to use it in a sentence on Tuesday.
The brain receives a completely different biological signal.
Exactly. It says, wait, this piece of data keeps appearing. This is a vital recurring element of our environment. We need to build a permanent reinforced neural pathway for this.
This makes so much sense. I want to expand on an analogy here because treating language like cognitive muscle is the only way to understand it.
Let's hear it.
Think about going to a physical gym. You cannot walk into a gym, lift heavy weights for 10 uninterrupted hours on a Sunday, and expect to wake up looking like a bodybuilder on Monday.
No, lifting for 10 hours straight would simply result in a catastrophic muscle tear or rhabdomyolysis.
Yeah.
You would destroy the tissue.
Exactly. The muscle does not grow during a marathon session. The muscle requires consistent, targeted daily microtears, followed by periods of rest, followed by more microtears.
Language learning is identical. You are building cognitive muscle tissue.
Which is why the source document emphasizes a very specific, almost unbelievable mathematical ratio. It states, 15 minutes of English every single day is 10 times more effective than 5 hours once a week.
Let's look at the math on that because it feels counterintuitive.
Right. 5 hours on a Sunday is 300 minutes of studying.
15 minutes a day across a 7-day week is only 105 minutes.
You are literally spending a third of the total time studying, but the document claims it is 10 times more effective.
And it is, because you are hacking the brain's frequency metric. By touching the language every single day, even briefly, you are constantly sending that survival signal to the hippocampus.
You are telling your brain, this is important, keep these pathways open, do not prune these synapses.
And beyond the neurological advantages, this 15-minute daily approach solves a massive psychological barrier, the friction of starting.
Oh, the friction is real.
Finding a 5-hour block of uninterrupted free time in a modern adult schedule is nearly impossible. It requires a monumental amount of motivation.
Yeah, if you are tired on Sunday or your kids are sick, you will look at that 5-hour block and say, I can't do it today, I'll just skip this week.
It creates an all-or-nothing mindset, which inevitably leads to nothing. But 15 minutes. Every single person has 15 minutes.
It requires almost zero motivation.
The friction is so incredibly low that you cannot realistically generate a valid excuse to skip it.
So let's provide the listener with actionable mechanics. How do they actually implement this daily exposure without it feeling like a chore?
The source provides excellent practical advice for building this into a chaotic daily routine, leveraging a behavioral psychology concept known as habit stacking.
Habit stacking is revolutionary. The premise is that you do not try to carve out a brand new dedicated 15-minute block in your schedule because your schedule is already packed.
Right. Instead, you identify an existing, deeply ingrained habit, something you do every single day without fail, like drinking your morning coffee, taking a shower, or driving to work.
And then you stack the new habit, English practice, directly on top of the old one.
Let's map out the commute example.
Yeah.
If you decide, I will only listen to this specific English shadowing podcast while I am driving to the office, then suddenly your car becomes your classroom.
You don't have to summon the willpower to study. You just have to summon the willpower to go to work, which you were doing anyway.
You turn the key in the ignition, the audio starts, and you are automatically getting your 15 minutes of immersive exposure.
The morning coffee routine is another perfect stack.
Oh, absolutely. If you spend 10 minutes every morning sipping coffee and scrolling through social media, you don't need to stop scrolling.
Just switch the language of your phone's operating system to English.
Yes. Follow a few English creators in your feed. Read one short news article in English while you drink your coffee. It is completely seamless.
It fundamentally reframes language learning. It takes it from being this heavy, exhausting academic chore and turns it into a light, daily hygiene practice.
Like brushing your teeth.
Exactly. You don't brush your teeth for 3 hours on a Sunday. You brush them for 2 minutes, twice a day, every day, forever.
That consistency is the foundational key that unlocks every single other method we have discussed today.
It ties it all together.
You cannot effectively shadow native speakers if you only do it once a week. Your mouth will forget the muscle memory.
Right.
You cannot internalize high-frequency chunks if you aren't exposing your brain to them daily. And you certainly cannot overcome the deep psychological fear of making mistakes if you only allow yourself to be brave 1 day out of 7.
We have covered a truly massive amount of cognitive and linguistic territory today. Let's trace the arc of the journey we've been on.
Let's recap.
We began by dismantling the translation trap, recognizing that English is not merely a vocabulary swap, but a fundamentally different architectural structure.
We learned that to survive, you must abandon the 12-lane superhighway of your native tongue and start building direct sensory bridges to English chunks.
From there, we confronted the paralysis of perfectionism. We examined how the adult ego and our educational conditioning act as the ultimate enemies of fluency.
We learned that making mistakes is not a sign of failure, but the literal biological mechanism of learning. We must embrace the messy, chaotic reality of the toddler simply trying to get the milk.
Just get the milk. Then we shattered the illusion of sophistication. We retired the robotic, Victorian-era AI vocabulary.
We discovered that mastering 100 simple, everyday phrasal verbs is infinitely more powerful and natural than memorizing 1,000 obscure dictionary words.
We then explored the physical reality of language, the musicality of meaning. We acknowledged that English spelling is a historical, chaotic mess, and that the rhythm and stress of a word can literally alter its definition.
We introduced shadowing as the ultimate physical workout for your motor cortex.
And finally, we solved the cramming conundrum. We traded the exhausting, scientifically flawed 5-hour Sunday marathon for the compounding neurological power of 15-minute daily habit stacking.
When you weave all of these pieces together, it provides an incredibly robust, psychologically sound framework. But consider the broader implications for a moment. The ultimate takeaway for you, the listener, is that these principles are entirely universal.
Expand on that. How do these apply beyond English?
Whether you are trying to learn English, or you are attempting to pick up a new coding language like Python, or mastering a complex technical skill for your career, or even learning to play the piano, the psychological barriers are identical.
That makes total sense.
The principles of prioritizing consistency over binging, focusing on practical context rather than theoretical perfection, and most importantly, letting go of your adult ego so you can comfortably make messy mistakes in the pursuit of fluency. These apply to every facet of human growth.
Wow.
If you can master these specific habits within the realm of language learning, you are fundamentally training your brain how to learn anything effectively.
That is a staggering realization. The process of learning a language is, in reality, the process of learning how to learn.
Precisely.
I want to leave you with a final, slightly philosophical question to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. We have spent the last hour dissecting mistakes, how to avoid them, why we fear them, and why we actually need to make them. But consider this reality. Native English speakers are constantly, relentlessly making grammatical mistakes.
All the time.
Slang, the lifeblood of modern communication, is literally born from intentionally breaking the rules of grammar. Dialects evolve over centuries simply because a group of people collectively decided to pronounce things incorrectly or use words in the wrong context until that incorrect context gained enough frequency to become the new normal.
Language is incredibly fluid. It is a living organism.
Exactly. So the provocative thought I want to leave you with is this. Does a perfect version of English even exist? If the native speakers themselves do not speak it perfectly, and if the rigid rules of the dictionary are broken every single day to create new art, new slang, and new ways of expressing the human experience, maybe striving for perfect English is chasing a ghost.
That is so true.
Maybe language isn't a rigid schematic or a mathematical equation to be solved. Maybe it is just a living, breathing, beautifully imperfect biological tool whose only real job at the end of the day is to connect us to one another.
A truly profound thought to end on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this custom deep dive. We really appreciate you bringing such a fascinating, multi-layered topic to the table. Keep practicing, embrace the messy mistakes, enjoy your 15 minutes of habit stacking tomorrow morning, and we will catch you on the next one.
Remember, making mistakes is not a failure. It is proof that you are trying. Don't let the fear of being imperfect stop you from speaking. Pick one mistake we talked about today and work on fixing it this week. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring the bell for more lessons. Keep practicing and keep leveling up your English.